Hello, my friends. D.L. Anderson here. Welcome back to Transformation by Truth podcast as we share the truth concerning these last days and what you must do to save yourself from the violent times that are just ahead. Today's podcast is a word of truth accounting of the end times. The end is coming. The end is near. Today's podcast is entitled End Times 307, The 80 Degrees of Lawlessness, Part 4. But you shall receive power when the set apart Spirit has come upon you. The podcast's objectives are reveal the only way you can defeat the source of lawlessness, reveal one of the greatest gifts given to man, and analyze the importance of wielding the powers of the Spirit. This lesson contains timelines and other visuals. Therefore, if you are listening to the podcast, I advise you to watch the video version on our website or YouTube, or request a PDF of the lesson so you can add the visual effect. Defeating lawlessness at the source. Shalom, my beloved brothers and sisters, and welcome to day 15 of our exposition of lawlessness. In the most recent podcast, we utilize the pinnacle of holiness as a validated spiritual model to prove the validity of the mountain of lawlessness. In doing so, we used two powerful and prominent passages of Scripture. To wit, we considered Isaiah 28, 9 through 10, and 2 Peter 1, 3 through 11. These passages not only reveal the linear model of holiness, but they also provide us with the foundation of the sequence of the lines and precepts of holiness. As I said in the most recent podcast, this is huge. And although there are hundreds of reasons why this is true, I will use the following points of interest to address what I believe are the primary two. First and foremost, these scriptures provide us with the spiritual framework for the way of holiness. That is, the path that not only affords us the seal of Elohim, my dear friends, this is the path to everlasting life. And thanks to Isaiah and Peter, we know all the levels and intervals associated with this ascending pathway. This leads to the second point. That is, all the degrees of holiness are parallel to the degrees of lawlessness. Vis-a-vis, each degree of the former has a counterpart associated with the latter. Ergo, for every degree of holiness, there is a corresponding degree of lawlessness. Therefore, by providing us with the framework for the pinnacle of holiness, Isaiah and Peter have also provided us with the framework for the mountain of lawlessness. My dear friends, allow me to say it again. This is huge. Trust me, I've seen hundreds, maybe thousands of men and women attempt to overcome the sin in their lives, only to fail miserably and often. And do you know why? The answer is sure. It's because they were not following a spiritually validated model. To wit, they were attempting to eliminate a spiritual scourge defined by a system and processes without a system or processes. Trust me, the spiritual network of lawlessness is extremely complex and powerful. You're not going to overcome it by doing your best to resist sin, or by simply thinking you can stop sinning the same way you can quit smoking. My dear friends, hear me when I say the only way to eliminate any spiritual force is to eliminate it at the source. And that's what we have with the pinnacle of holiness. We have a spiritually validated process for defeating lawlessness at the source. One of the greatest gifts. Now, this should be plain to see, first and foremost, because all the levels and intervals of the pinnacle of holiness and the mountain of lawlessness are spiritual opposites, which is a testament to my prior assertion that holiness is the antithesis of lawlessness. You can see this clearly by observing the two models below. Faith, which is the foundation of holiness, is adjacent to doubt, the leading interval of lawlessness. Likewise, obedience, i.e., the leading interval of holiness, is adjacent to disobedience, the leading level of lawlessness. If you observe these models closely, you will see this trend repeats itself. From faith all the way to love, every degree of holiness is adjacent to a degree of lawlessness, which constitutes its spiritual opposite. Now, very needless to say, this not only makes eliminating lawlessness much easier to understand, it also makes it much easier to implement. To wit, eliminating the 80 degrees of lawlessness is a feat the true contenders for holiness, perfection, and everlasting life are more than able to achieve. Here is why. As our mastery of every degree of holiness includes our victory over the corresponding degree of lawlessness, the entire development is not only dynamic, but it is also natural. Take faith, for example. The man or woman who makes up their mind to become a hero of faith will naturally be inclined to overcome doubt. Trust me, no one in their right mind expects to become a master of faith apart from eliminating doubt. The reason why is sure. One degree is associated with light, and the other degree is associated with darkness. And as we know, light and darkness cannot occupy the same allotment of spiritual or physical space. You cannot have faith in any situation if you have even a small fraction of doubt. Therefore, as we progress this phase, I will show you how you can eliminate every degree of lawlessness by simply unlocking every degree of holiness, all of which constitute some form of spiritual power. That's right, my friends. I'm going to show you how you can finally begin wielding the various powers of the Spirit of Elohim. And if this is not something you have been taught, I advise you to stay with me, for the ability to receive and wield spiritual power is one of the greatest gifts given to man. Are you ready for a fight? Now, the importance of being able to wield the powers of the set apart spirit should be clear to see. And yet, these powers have been largely discounted for a depressing reason, which I will offer as an inflection point. I advise you to consider it carefully. The primary reason why so many have discounted the powers of the set apart spirit is because they are not qualified to wield them. To make matters worse, these same individuals, many of whom are within the extended nation of Israel, and some of whom believe they will be sealed, have no desire to put in the spiritual work to wield these powers. Now, what these slothful servants fail to realize is as dangerous as it is sure. That is, becoming adept with the powers of the Spirit is not an option. It is a requirement for the seal of Elohim and the eternal salvation. This speaks to the scenario I spoke about earlier in this podcast, vis-a-vis many attempt to eliminate the lawlessness and sin in their lives without eliminating it at the source. Here lies the inflection. And again, I ask you to consider it carefully. The source of every degree of lawlessness in your life is, in fact, the kingdom of darkness. Here lies the problem with thinking you will be sealed or saved if you cannot wield the powers of the Spirit. Vis-a-vis, you cannot defeat the kingdom of darkness in your life without spiritual power. Trust me, it's a non-starter. And if you cannot defeat the kingdom of darkness, then you cannot eliminate lawlessness. And if you cannot eliminate lawlessness, then you cannot be sealed. And if you cannot be sealed, then you cannot be saved. 1 John 2:13 is revealing. I write to you, fathers, because you have known him from the beginning. I write to you, young men, because you have overcome the wicked one. I write to you, little children, because you have known the Father. This is just one of many passages that confirms our salvation includes our victory over the kingdom of darkness. And not just one victory. We're talking at least 80 victories, one for each degree of lawlessness, and all the other battles we will be called to fight on behalf of the kingdom of heaven. That said, I only have one question for everyone who is following this ministry. Are you ready to take the battle to the enemy? Are you ready for a fight? If you're not, don't worry. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have the time to get it right. So I advise you again to stay with me, for I will show you by the Spirit how you can wield great power and be victorious in every fight. Now, here is the final word. Lo, we are living in the last hour, and none will succeed without great power. This word of truth is a continuation of the message. To wit, it will take great power to survive in these last days, and it will take a great work to unlock these powers. Therefore, I encourage everyone who is still with us, don't settle for the spiritual status quo. Rather, set your mind to greater works and cast your lot to ever row. Now, here is today's assignment. Meditate on the word you have heard today. And as always, ask the Father to reveal the truth to you. For the children of Elohim live by conviction. And if he has not convicted you, or if you had not heard him concerning these matters, you should pray until you do. For today, I want you to focus on all the areas of your life where you are not currently victorious. Focus on all the spiritual and or physical needs you have prayed about and have not yet been met. If you have time, I advise you to write each one down on a piece of paper and keep it close to you. Because I guarantee, if it is the Father's will, each one will be resolved if you follow the teaching and the training we provide, and you stay in the way of holiness. Now, here is what's next. We completed today's podcast, End Times 307, The 80 Degrees of Lawlessness, Part 4. And the next podcast is entitled End Times 308, The Power to Defeat the Kingdom of Darkness. I will post this podcast on Wednesday, July 17th, 2024. Until then, my friends, continue to be led by the Spirit of Elohim. Continue to watch, continue to pray, continue in fasting, and most of all, continue to be focused, for the end is coming. The end is near.